He said it like he was asking me to hold his coffee. "Dad, I forgot to buy you a ticket. It's oversold. Go home." I was the one who paid for the ocean. $20,000 in 2 neat slices, yet I stood at O'Hare under the 7:10 a.m. Honolulu departure with a manila folder and no boarding pass. The gate agent skimmed the manifest and slid past my name like I was a ghost. "No Martin Hale on this flight, sir. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. You'll want to hear how this ocean paid me back. Terminal 1 looked extra clean and extra cruel. The board flickered H&L. A jetway door sighed open. Somewhere a coffee lid clicked shut. Tiny sounds that made the silence in my chest louder. Daniel wore a breezy linen shirt that pretends it never wrinkles. "We'll FaceTime you from the beach," he added, already guiding his wife and my granddaughter into the TSA rope maze. Her glittery backpack bounced like a small, happy verdict. I had the voucher in my hand, crisp and undeniable. Lead guest, M. Hale, primary. Lead guest. Imagine being the lead guest who gets told to go home. I slid the paper back into the folder and felt the weight of my own name. I'd wired $8,000 on June 3rd and $12,000 on June 17th to Pacific Crown Travel in Naperville, visa ending 14/27, because my son had said, "Let me handle the logistics, Dad. You've done enough." He said it tenderly, the way a son massages. A father's shoulders. The tenderness turned out to be a tourniquet. I tried the obvious. "Daniel, call me." Straight to voicemail. A text instead. "Comp you next time." Comp me, as if I were a broken appetizer. I asked the counter if there'd been a mistake. The agent printed the family list and placed it on the counter with a pity tilt. 6 names in our group. No Martin Hale. At the bottom, a ballpoint scrawl. Check-in contact, Daniel Hale Sr. A stranger's handwriting had moved me out of my own trip. By 10:20 a.m., I was back on my porch in Naperville, July heat making the rails sticky. Lemon cleaner still clung to the air inside. My wife loved that smell. She's been gone 3 summers. I set the voucher and my statement side by side on the kitchen table, like tiles in a grim mosaic. The dates were steady, obedient. 06/03, $8,000. 06/17, $12,000. I underlined them with a felt pen and felt nothing but the pen's scratch. At 12:12 p.m., Daniel's voicemail arrived. "Dad, calm down. It was complicated. We'll comp you next time." I played it twice, then a third time on speaker, the way I used to set a family dinner, something shared, something earned. Embarrassment is colder than anger. It doesn't flare, it freezes. I called the travel agency. A breezy rep read my file. Like weather. Per our records, Mr. Hale is the lead guest. Reservation was transferred to Daniel Hale Sr. at check-in request. Transferred. Like I was a phone call. I pressed my palm flat on the voucher. Lead guest stared back. I wrote the time and date in the margin and slid the voicemail into the folder. The folder, in that moment, stopped being paper and turned into a ladder. I didn't yet know the names for the rungs. Rosa down the block, who speaks court like a second language. Priya at the bank, who understands what a chargeback really is. But I knew the rule the ladder would be built on. Paper beats. Mouth, I wasn't going to stay humiliated. I was going to stay documented. Boundaries first. Justice next. By the time I pulled into my driveway at 10:20 a.m., the July heat had baked the shingles until they shimmered. The porch rail was tacky under my palm. I remember thinking that the house even smelled lonely. Lemon cleaner and dust. My wife loved that scent. 3 summers gone, and I still buy the same brand. I set the folder on the kitchen table, laid out the receipts like a dealer showing bad cards. June 3rd, $8,000. June 17th, $12,000, both to Pacific Crown Travel. $20,000 exactly, wired from my visa ending in 14/27. My handwriting trembled as I circled each line with a blue pen. The ink bled slightly, like it wanted to testify too. At 11:42 a.m., my phone lit up. Daniel, voicemail, 023. Dad, calm down, it was complicated. We'll comp you next time. He said it like a waiter offering store credit for a ruined meal. The word comp didn't make sense to me. Comp me for what? For being erased. I set the phone down, stared at the mantel where my wife's urn rested between two framed photos. Our wedding day and our children's first Christmas together. I whispered to her the way I sometimes do, "You'd know what to say." The answer, of course, was silence. Just the ticking wall clock and the faint drone of lawnmowers from down the block. I called Pacific Crown Travel. The woman on the line had a voice so chipper I could almost see her smile through the phone. "Oh yes, Mr. Hale," she said. "You're listed as the lead guest on the reservation. Looks like the check-in name was changed to Daniel Hale. In per a request received on July 3rd. By who?" I asked. "By Daniel Hale." He indicated verbal authorization from his father. I stared at the phone. "I am his father." A pause. "Oh," she said, tone flattening. "Well, that's awkward." Awkward. The word sat in the air like a fly on a wound. After we hung up, I walked outside, sat on the steps, and watched. The mail truck rattled past. I thought about the old rule we used to tell the kids. You break it, you replace it. What do you do when someone breaks your trust instead? At 3:41 p.m., my phone pinged. The family group chat. Daniel. Made it. A photo of him grinning in sunglasses, an infinity pool stretching behind him. Emily, thanks again, Dad. You're the best. My granddaughter, holding a tiny umbrella drink. Then my sister-in-law commented, "So happy the patriarch treated everyone." I nearly laughed. Patriarch. The word used to mean something. Now it was a caption under a man who'd been left standing at the gate. I scrolled past the photos until I couldn't anymore, then closed the chat. I went to the kitchen drawer, took out a yellow legal pad, and wrote one line across. The top, what I paid for. Below it, I listed every expense I remembered. Deposit 0603, 8,000 balance 0617, 12,000 luggage upgrade, $480, gift to Daniel last Christmas, travel insurance, 327 that I added myself, total 2807. I drew a line under it. Then I added a smaller note. What I got, go home. It was almost funny if you squinted hard enough. That night, the house settled into its usual evening rhythm. Crickets outside, refrigerator hum inside. I microwaved leftover chili and couldn't taste it. The silence grew heavy. Somewhere, a sprinkler hissed. I'd forgotten to turn off Daniel's front yard timer for him before the trip. I made a mental note to water his hydrangeas anyway. Old habits die like that, slowly and stupidly. At 9:56 p.m., a notification buzzed. It was Lena, my daughter. We hadn't talked properly in months. Her message was short. Dad, this is wrong. Screenshot everything. Don't reply in the family chat. That one text cracked the ice around my ribs. I wasn't crazy. Someone else saw it. I walked to the kitchen counter, pulled the voucher back out and pressed my hand flat against it again. Lead guest, M. Hale, primary. I didn't know it yet, but that phrase would become my spine for the next 2 months. By 11:15 p.m., I had a small stack of printed emails, screenshots, and my visa statement arranged neatly on the table. I looked at the empty chair across from me, the one where Daniel always used to sit for Sunday lunch, and said out loud, "You just bought yourself a problem you can't comp." The clock ticked toward midnight. I capped my pen and whispered the first word that came to mind. It wasn't anger, it was documentation. Because humiliation, when written down, starts to look a lot like evidence. The next morning, July 6th, sunlight spilled through the blinds in neat golden lines across the kitchen table. The same table now covered in paper evidence, receipts, screenshots, the hotel voucher, and my blue pen lying like a weapon between them. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Daniel's voice. Go home. By 8:15 a.m., I walked down the street to Rosa Alvarez's porch. Rosa had been my neighbor for 20 years. Retired legal secretary, sharp as barbed wire, and sweet enough to make it sting. She looked at me over her glasses. You look like a man who just found termites in his family tree. I slid the manila folder across her table. She didn't open it right away. Tell me what happened, she said. I did. Every word, from the airport humiliation to the compa you next time voicemail. When I finished, she nodded slowly, finally flipping through the papers. You paid. They flew. You got left. That's not a misunderstanding, Martin. That's a paper case. She grabbed a small pad and began listing steps like she was writing a recipe. 1. Save and print every message. 2. Pull your bank statements for June and July. 3. Write to the travel agency for their internal records. 4. Record any calls, announce it clearly. Legal that way in Illinois. She slid the pad back to me. You do this right, you don't get revenge. You get restitution. Small claims? I asked. She smirked. Exactly. And Martin? She tapped the folder. Paper beats mouth in court. That line stuck in me like a nail. By 1:30 p.m., I was on the phone with Priya Mehta from my bank's dispute department. Calm, professional voice, like someone who's seen too many. Ruined trust funds. I'd like to file a dispute, I said, for $20,000 charged to Pacific Crown Travel, goods or services not received by the cardholder. She verified the transactions. June 3rd, $8,000, June 17th, $12,000, visa ending, 1427. Got it, she said. Attach any supporting documentation. I've got plenty, I replied, scanning the voucher. Lead guest, me. We'll open a case today, she said. Temporary credits pending investigation, but keep your own file. If you go civil, our notes help. Her tone turned softer. Mr. Hale, was it your son? I paused. Yeah, she sighed. Then document everything twice. That evening I texted Daniel, I'd like the tickets you promised or a refund by July 12th. He read it. Those 3 dots blinked forever, and then finally replied at 2:17 p.m. Dad, stop being dramatic. We'll talk when we're back. I typed one. Last message. Per Rosa's advice, I'm preserving all communications. Delivered. Read. No response. On July 8th, a buzz from my daughter Lena lit up the screen. Dad, look at this. Attached were screenshots from the family chat. Daniel writing, we reallocated Dad's room. He's happier at home anyway. Underneath, his wife had commented with a palm tree emoji. Lena added, Mum would have smacked him for that. I scrolled through the images again, slower this time, until one small detail stopped me cold. A hotel folio posted in the background of a photo. I zoomed in. The name line said Daniel Hale Sr., and beneath it, $720 resort upgrade, 0708. Amex ending 3341. The same day I'd watered his hydrangeas so they wouldn't wilt. I printed the screenshot, circled the date, and slid it into the folder behind my visa statement. Rosa was right. This wasn't a fight anymore. It was a record. That night I called the travel agency again. I asked for the manager and told her I was recording the call for accuracy. She hesitated, but didn't object. Yes, Mr. Hale, the booking was changed at the traveler's request. Which traveler? I asked. She rustled some papers. Daniel Hale. He sent an email July 3rd requesting the lead guest name be changed. Did you have written consent from the payer? His email says his father approved verbally. I could almost hear Rosa laughing from 2 houses away. Verbal isn't proof, I said. Please include that note in your response to my certified request. At 10:42 p.m., I typed the letter Rosa had drafted earlier. To Pacific Crown Travel, I request a complete record of the reservation purchased on 0603 and 06-17, confirmation number 88973 MH. Please provide all internal notes and communications regarding any name or leadership changes. Respectfully, Martin Hale. I printed it, signed it, sealed it, and walked to the blue mailbox under the streetlight. The air smelled of cut grass and humidity. When I dropped the envelope in, it made a soft metallic clink. That sound, small, final, felt better than anything had in days. Back home, I poured myself a single glass of bourbon, sat by the kitchen window, and looked at the reflection of the folder in the glass. It no longer looked like evidence. It looked like armor. Before bed, I texted Lena, "Thank you for standing up. I'll handle it properly." She replied 1 minute later, "Good. Make him answer on paper." I smiled. The plan wasn't revenge. It was arithmetic. He'd made the equation unfair. I was just balancing it again. July 12th. The refund deadline I'd given Daniel came and went like a bad holiday. Nothing in the mailbox, nothing in my account, not even a call. I brewed coffee at 6 a.m., set the mug beside the folder, and began printing everything in sight. Texts, emails, screenshots, folios, receipts. The inkjet hummed like a small, relentless engine of justice. On the first page, I enlarged his text, "Stop being dramatic," and taped it above my desk. It wasn't an insult anymore. It was evidence. At 9:35 a.m., I dialed the travel agency. Again, for transparency, I said, "I'm recording this call." The manager hesitated, but confirmed what I already knew. "Yes, Mr. Hale, you were listed as lead guest." The name was changed on July 3rd by Daniel Hale. Our file says verbal permission from father. I asked her to read exactly what the attached note said. She did. Word for word. "My father approved verbally. All good to proceed." When I hung up, I sat there for a full minute, staring at the phone. My father used to say, "If they lie on paper, let the paper speak louder." That night, Rosa came by with her old legal pad. "We'll make a demand letter," she said, pulling out her fountain pen like a weapon from a sheath. "Keep it. No adjectives. Just facts." Together we drafted it line by line. July 15th, 2025. Dear Mr. Daniel Hale, this letter serves as formal demand for repayment of $20,000 paid by me to Pacific Crown Travel for a Hawaii trip scheduled July 5th to 12, 2025, from which I was excluded. Amount due $20,000. Deadline July 25th, 2025. Failure to remit payment will result in civil proceedings without further notice. Respectfully, Martin Hale. I printed it, signed it with a steady hand, and drove to the Sioux post office before closing. The clerk stamped it certified, return receipt requested. The green card would become one more rung on my ladder. On July 20th, Daniel knocked on my door at 8:05 p.m. He looked tan, rested, and smug. "Dad, this is crazy," he said, stepping into the doorway. "Can we not make this a thing? We're family." "Family is supposed to mean accountability," I said. He gestured toward the folder on the table. "Are you really doing this? Letters, lawyers, all that?" "You told me to go home," I said quietly. "This is what home looks like now." He exhaled hard through his nose, like a teacher scolding a child. "Fine. We'll comp you at Christmas." "Christmas won't cover July," I said. He looked away, mumbled something about misunderstanding, and left. When I shut the door, I locked it, then changed the deadbolt code the next morning. Boundaries are free. Locks are cheap. On August 2nd, Priya from the bank emailed me. "Temporary credit of $20,000 applied pending investigation. Keep documenting communications." That same day she called. "If he tries to get you to cancel the dispute, don't. That's tampering with an open case." It felt strange to have allies. Quiet, professional people who didn't share my blood, but cared about my proof. By August 5th, the certified mail receipt came back signed in Daniel's own pen. I held it up to the light like a relic. Rosa smiled when I showed her. That's acknowledgement, she said. One step before accountability. We organized the binder together on her kitchen counter. Tab 1, proof of payment, visa statements. June 3rd and 17, tab 2, communication logs, texts, voicemail, screenshots. Tab 3, travel agency confirmation. Tab 4, hotel folio, 720 resort upgrade, July 8. Tab 5, demand letter and receipt. Rosa whistled. You've got him pinned to the page. Paper beats mouth, I repeated. She raised her coffee mug. To paper. On August 10th, Daniel texted, I saw your posts. You're embarrassing the family. Let's talk this out privately. I typed back, we'll talk publicly, in front of a judge. September 12th, 9:30 a.m. He read it. Didn't reply. That night I sat in my recliner, the folder resting on my lap, heavy and righteous. Every receipt, every note, every printed screenshot had a pulse now. It was more than documentation, it was dignity in paper form. I made a quiet vow before turning in. No shouting, no insults, no cruelty, just proof. Because the real revenge wasn't anger, it was accuracy. By the end of July, the days had turned slow and airless. Every morning I watered my lawn and waited for something. An apology, a transfer, a sign of decency. None came. So on July 28th, I drove to the DuPage County Courthouse and filed my small claims complaint. It felt strange, walking through those glass doors with my manila folder held tight like a Bible. Rosa had coached me on how to write it. No anger, just truth. Plaintiff, paid for trip. Defendant used funds and excluded plaintiff. 3 lines, $20,000, and the sound of a clerk's stamp landing on the page like a small gavel. Case 25 SC 3127. I paid $238 in filing fees, handed over $65 for process service, and walked out lighter. Not happy, just lighter. On August 1st, Rosa texted, service confirmed. He'll get it this weekend. Sure enough, at 6:12 p.m. on August 3rd, the process server snapped a photo of Daniel standing on his Downers Grove driveway, envelope in hand, expression, frozen mid-smirk. The caption on the affidavit read simply, defendant personally served. That evening my phone buzzed again. A new post from Emily, my daughter-in-law, on Instagram. Thank you to the best FIL in the world for making Hawaii unforgettable. The photo showed Daniel holding a Mai Tai, sunlight bouncing off his sunglasses. I printed it and added it to tab 2 communications, right after the text that said, go home. Family chatter started turning into weather. Everyone could feel it, but nobody wanted to describe it. My sister called. Do we have to pick sides? I said, just pick the truth. She sighed. It's all so awkward. Awkward is when you forget a ticket, I said. This is theft. On August 10th, Daniel showed up unannounced again. He didn't knock, just walked into my yard like it was still his right. Dad, he said, voice dripping with condescension, you really filed a lawsuit? You want to humiliate your own son in public? I set down the garden hose and wiped my hands. No, I want to hold my own son accountable. He scoffed. A judge isn't gonna make me pay. Then he'll make it official, I said, pulling a folded paper from my pocket, the hearing notice. September 12th, 9:30 a.m. Courtroom 1606. You'll get the same copy in the mail. He stared at the page, his tan fading into something ashy. You're out of your mind. No, I said softly. I'm finally in it. That night, I changed the garage keypad code and texted him afterward, garage code updated. Please return my spare key by Friday. No reply, of course. But by Saturday, an envelope with the key arrived in my mailbox. No note inside, just the key. That silence was as good as any confession. Later that week, Lena came by with her little girl. She set her phone on the table and hit play. Daniel's Voicemail, that smug voice saying, "Dad, calm down. It was complicated. We'll comp you next time." She looked at me. Let a judge hear his calm. We both laughed, tired but united. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks. She hugged me before leaving and said, "Mom would be proud you finally drew a line." That same night at 9:47 p.m., I received a notification, certified mail delivered, signed by D. Hale. The green card was back. The paper chain was closed. I placed it on top of my binder and whispered, "The ladder's tall enough." When I turned off the light, I realized something. I wasn't climbing out of humiliation anymore. I was climbing above it. Every document, every text, every receipt, each one was a rung made of proof, not pain. And from that height, I could finally see what revenge really looked like. Not fire, but order. Not screaming, but structure. Not blood, but balance. September 12, 2025. The morning of the hearing smelled like rain and coffee. I woke before dawn, pressed my shirt, and packed my binder, the same manila folder reborn as a fortress. Each tab was labeled in neat block letters: money, messages, manifest. Folio, bank. I slipped Rosa's note between the pages. Stay calm. Let the paper speak. By 8:30 a.m., I was parked outside the DuPage County Courthouse. The limestone walls looked colder than usual. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I passed the security checkpoint. The guard glanced at my folder and smiled. "Looks like you mean business." "I'm here for family business," I said. Courtroom 1606 was half empty. Beige walls, wooden benches, the faint echo of a clock ticking above the seal of the state of Illinois. Rosa sat beside me, her reading glasses on a chain. She whispered, "He'll come late. They always do." She was right. At 9:12 a.m., Daniel walked in wearing a navy blazer and sunglasses perched on his head like he was at a country club. He gave me a half smile, half grimace. "You really brought a lawyer?" he asked, spotting Rosa. "She's retired," I said. "I brought a witness, a bailiff called Hale versus Hale." Judge Terrence K. Boyd adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "Let's make this simple, gentlemen." Before testimony, Daniel's friend, a real estate buddy pretending to be his representative, approached me in the hallway. "Look, Martin," he began, tone oily. "Dan feels terrible. If you dismiss the case today, he'll write a check for $5,000 right now." Rosa crossed her arms. "They're pricing your humiliation," she said quietly. I looked the man in the eye. "Tell him I'm not for sale." Back inside, the clerk swore us in. The judge gestured to me. "Mr. Hale, give the court a short summary." I opened the binder to tab 1. "Your Honor, I paid $20,000, 2 transactions, June 3rd and June 17th, to Pacific Crown Travel for a family vacation to Hawaii. My son, the defendant, used those funds for the trip, changed the reservation into his own name and excluded me. Here are the receipts showing me as lead guest. Here's the airline list showing my name removed. Here's the hotel folio showing a $720 resort upgrade on his card. And here," I held up my phone, "is the voicemail he left me the morning of the flight. 'Dad, calm down. It was complicated. We'll comp you next time.'" The judge raised an eyebrow. "You have that recording?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Play it." I tapped play. Daniel's voice filled the courtroom, smug, careless, and perfectly clear. "Dad, calm down. It was complicated. We'll comp you next time." The sound of it in that echoing room was almost holy. Rosa didn't look at me. She didn't need to. We both knew that was the moment everything shifted. When the clip ended, Judge Boyd lifted a hand. "Stop. That's enough." He turned to Daniel. "Did your father pay for this trip?" Daniel hesitated. "Yes, but—" "And did you use those funds?" He shrugged. "He told me he didn't want to go." The judge frowned. "Do you have that in writing?" "No, but—" "Then you don't have it." The silence in the room was so tight it hummed. Daniel's face reddened. "He's just trying to embarrass me," he blurted. The judge leaned back. "Embarrassment is Not a legal remedy, Mr. Hale. Repayment is. I could feel the tension unclench in my chest, one vertebra at a time. Then came the twist, the moment Rosa would later call divine paperwork. The judge asked, "Has any parallel investigation or financial dispute been opened?" I nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. My bank initiated a credit dispute for the same amount. Their fraud investigator, Ms. Priya Mehta, is available by phone." The judge raised a brow. "Let's get her on speaker." Rosa dialed. Priya's voice came through the static, calm, professional. "Temporary credit of $20,000 issued to the cardholder pending outcome of this hearing. If the court rules in his favor, the bank will release funds permanently. If not, we'll reverse the credit." The judge smiled faintly. "That will be helpful." Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. For once he had no script. Judge Boyd scribbled a few notes. "All right," he said. "I'm ready for findings." I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just stared at the folder in front of me, the one that had started as humiliation and turned into order. Rosa touched my arm and whispered, "Whatever happens now, you already won. You walked in with proof, but I wasn't thinking about winning. I was thinking about every step between July 5 and now, the gate agent's pity, the go home, the $20,000 disappearing like a tide, and how each line on paper had brought me back here, dry and standing." The bailiff called for quiet. The judge looked at both of us. His pen hovered above the order sheet, and for the first time in 2 months, I felt the air in that courtroom shift. Justice wasn't coming tomorrow. It was already in the room. Judge Boyd didn't raise his voice when he spoke, but his tone could have sliced glass. "Findings for the plaintiff," he said. "Judgment in the amount of $20,000 plus $303 in court costs. Defendant's claim of verbal permission is unsupported and contradicted by written evidence. The conduct shown approaches elder financial exploitation. This court will not opine further but strongly recommends the defendant educate himself on Illinois law." The clerk's rubber stamp hit the paper with a flat thud. 09/12/25. That sound was cleaner than applause. For a second, I just stared at the seal on the judgment sheet. The words looked unreal. Findings for plaintiff. After 2 months of being dismissed, ignored, comped, and erased, someone official had said it out loud. I was right. Daniel's jaw locked, the muscles twitching under his tan. "You humiliated me," he hissed as we stepped into the hallway. His friend hovered awkwardly behind him. "No," I said, folding the copy of the order. "You did that yourself." I just wrote it down. Rosa was radiant but quiet. She waited until he'd stormed off before she said, "You know what that sound was in there?" "What?" "Paper-beating mouth." Outside, the September air felt like a brand-new season. I could smell rain on the wind. I sat on a bench beneath the courthouse steps, my binder beside me, and called Priya at the bank. She picked up immediately. "Mr. Hale, I just saw the ruling in the docket summary," she said, cheerful for the first time. "Congratulations. We'll finalize your case as a confirmed credit in your favor. Funds will post within 5 business days." "Thank you," I said. "I'm not even sure what to feel." "Feel documented," she replied. "That's the best kind of victory." Back home that afternoon, I made myself lunch, turkey on rye, just like my wife used to. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, sat at the same table where I'd first circled those credit card charges, and took my first sip since that morning at O'Hare. The taste was bitter and grounding and absolutely perfect. At 6:10 p.m., a text from Lena arrived. "Proud of you, Dad. He needed to hear no from someone." She attached a photo of my granddaughter at soccer practice, holding up a thumbs up to the camera. Her caption read, "Team Grandpa Undefeated." That night, I slept through the whole night for the first time since June. By September 15th, Priya called again. Funds settled and permanent. No reversal, The bank had closed the dispute, mirroring the court's judgment. 2 lines in my account statement, $20,000, confirmed what the courtroom had already decided. The first thing I did was print that page and slide it into Tabby. 1. Money. But Daniel wasn't done trying to spin the story. On September 17th, a voicemail appeared. "We're done, Dad. You took this too far. Family doesn't sue family." I replayed it once, not because I wanted to hear it, but because I wanted to remember the exact sound of his entitlement cracking. The next day, I drove to my lawyer's office, not Rosa's porch this time, a real firm in town, and filed a memorandum of judgment. The clerk stamped it, 0918. With that, the judgment became a lien. Daniel's pride might be bulletproof, but his paycheck wasn't. Rosa came by that weekend with a pie. "You going to garnish him?" she asked. "I'll give him 30 days, I said. "Mercy and documentation," she said, raising her coffee cup. "Best combination." On September 20th, I met with my estate attorney. I sat across from him in a polished oak office and slid the court order across the desk. "I want to amend my will," I said. He nodded. "Removing your son." "Redirecting," I said. "His portion goes into an education trust for my granddaughter, protected by a spendthrift clause." He smiled. "That's poetic." "It's arithmetic," I said. When I got home, I wrote Daniel one last message. "Your debt is satisfied by the court order. Your inheritance won't be. I wish you well, but this door's closed until respect knocks." No reply ever came. The following week, the garage keypad code was updated again. New digits, clean slate. The old key hung on a hook by the back door. Useless now. On September 30, a simple white envelope arrived. His cashier's check for $23 principal plus costs. No note, just numbers. I deposited it that afternoon and marked the case file paid in full. That night, I made another cup of coffee and stood at the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. Somewhere across town, Daniel was probably telling someone how unfair I'd been. Maybe he'd even convinced himself, but truth doesn't need believers. It just needs records. When I turned off the kitchen light, the reflection of the folder gleamed faintly on the counter. Every humiliation I'd swallowed since July had been translated into ink, dates, and a judge's order. It wasn't about the 20,000 anymore. It was about boundaries made visible. Paper turned into respect, and as I locked the door, I said it softly, to myself, to the empty house, to the version of me that stood at that airport gate. You didn't lose your son tonight. You just stopped paying for his mistakes. By the time the leaves began to bronze in late September, the story had already rewritten itself, from humiliation to ledger, from family betrayal to legal closure. September 23rd, I mailed a final, certified letter to Daniel's employer, notice of voluntary wage deduction per judgment, a 25 SC 3127. I didn't need to use it. I just wanted the record airtight. It worked. 2 days later, a knock at the door. The mailman handed me an overnight envelope, cashier's check for $20,303, signed and sealed by Daniel. No note inside, no apology, just money, paper, proof. Laid it flat on the kitchen counter under the morning light, the check glinting across the words, "Full satisfaction." It was the most honest sentence he'd ever sent me. That afternoon, Rosa came by carrying a grocery bag and her signature. Raised eyebrow. "So?" she asked, leaning over the check. "So he paid." She grinned. "Good. Now you get to decide what this was, revenge or correction." "Correction," I said. "Revenge fades. Correction teaches." On September 30th, I drove back to the courthouse. The clerk behind the counter recognized me. "Back again, Mr. Hale," she said. I slid the document across the glass. Satisfaction of judgment. She stamped it. Recorded and closed. 2 little words. Recorded and closed. And I could feel my spine straighten. When I stepped outside, the air was lighter. The courthouse doors hissed shut behind me like punctuation. The next day, I wrote a short letter to Pacific Crown Travel, to whom it may concern. Please find attached the order from DuPage County Circuit Court confirming judgment in my favor. Consider implementing a policy preventing any name or leadership changes without written authorization from the payer of record. It might save another father some grief. Respectfully, Martin Hale. By October 2nd, a manager called. Mr. Hale, she said, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll be adding a verification step for elder travelers. Her voice was nervous but sincere. For once, a system listened. That Friday, I picked up my granddaughter from school. She came running, ponytail bouncing, clutching a report card. Guess what, Grandpa? Straight A's. We celebrated with ice cream at a diner off Ogden Avenue. She asked, "Did you like Hawaii?" I smiled. "Didn't make it this time." Her eyes widened. "Why not?" "Because grown-ups sometimes forget their manners," I said gently. "But I'll take you one day. We'll see the ocean the right way." I meant it, not out of guilt, but out of principle. She deserved to see generosity without strings attached. That night, I opened a 529 college plan in her name, depositing $5,000 from the judgment. I printed the confirmation, slipped it into the file labeled Respect, and mailed a copy to Lena with a sticky note. For her future, not her father's pride. The remaining money I let sit in savings, not as a trophy, but as a monument to boundaries. At 8:47 p.m., I poured a small bourbon and stepped onto the porch. The hydrangeas I'd watered through July were finally blooming again. Funny how something so fragile could outlast pride. Rosa called from her porch 2 houses down. "You coming over for Domino's?" "Maybe later," I said. "Just finishing a chapter," she laughed. "You already finished it, Marty. You're just rereading the good part." When I went inside, I opened the folder one last time. The receipts, the letters, the judgment, they didn't feel like evidence anymore. They felt like instructions. I slid everything back into its sleeve, pressed the clasp shut, and wrote a new label in neat pen. Case file Davuro 1, boundaries. Then I turned off the kitchen light and whispered the word that had chased me for months, the word the judge had written at the bottom of that page, the word that had replaced humiliation with peace, satisfied. Justice didn't arrive like thunder. It came like sunrise, quiet, slow, and impossible to argue with. For months I'd imagined revenge as a movie moment, gavel slamming, gasps in the courtroom, my son humbled. But when it finally came, it didn't roar, it breathed. I spent the first week of October cleaning, not out of anger, just instinct. The house had been heavy with paperwork and tension. Now it needed air. I boxed old receipts, filed the court, order in my safe, and scrubbed the counters until lemon oil replaced the smell of worry. It felt like the house was exhaling too. That night I sat by the mantel. The urn of my wife still caught the evening light the way it always had. "You'd have handled it faster," I told her, "but I did it clean." I imagined her smile, that half smirk that meant, finally. The thing about revenge is, it's not always about payback. Sometimes it's about proving to yourself that you weren't crazy, that what happened did happen, that your trust was taken, and that writing it down is how you get it back. I'd paid for a week in Hawaii, and what I got was a master class in boundaries. I used to think forgiveness meant pretending it never happened. Now I know it means remembering, calmly, permanently, without bitterness. On October 5th, I walked to the hardware store and had a new spare key cut, not for Daniel, but for Lena. I wrote her a short note. The door is always open to honesty. That evening, she and my granddaughter came for dinner. She brought lasagna. I brought the story to an end. Over dessert, Lena said, "Dad, Mum would be proud of you. Not for winning, for staying decent." I laughed. Decent took a lot of paperwork. When they left, my granddaughter hugged me tight and whispered, "Next time, we'll go to the beach together, okay?" "Next time," I said. And I meant it. Later that night, I poured a small bourbon, opened my window, and listened to the wind against the blinds. The sound reminded me of the ocean I never saw, the one I'd paid for, only now I didn't feel cheated. The Pacific wasn't my destination anymore. Justice was. I thought about Daniel, whether he'd ever call again, whether he even could. Maybe someday he'll see the court order framed on my wall and realize it wasn't about money, it was about respect. But I'm not holding my breath. Some debts can be paid in full and still stay open in the heart. I looked down at the folder marked Case File Number 1, Boundaries, and smiled. I used to believe family ties were sacred no matter what. Now I believe they're contracts, renewed daily through trust, honesty, and gratitude. When one party defaults, you enforce it. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Justice doesn't erase betrayal. It just makes sure it has a return address. Before bed, I tore a small sheet from my notepad and wrote something for myself. A new line to replace every insult, every humiliation, every "go home." You didn't lose me, you gave me away. I taped it to the fridge beside my granddaughter's soccer photo. When I turned out the lights, the words glowed faintly under the kitchen nightlight. Quiet, steady, and completely mine. October 10th. The air had started to cool, the kind of crisp that makes you want to cook for someone. I decided to host a small cookout. Nothing grand, just a few neighbors, Lena and Rosa. No speeches, no drama, no pretense. Rosa brought flan in a glass dish. Lena arrived with her daughter, who carried a soccer trophy half her size. When the coals were glowing and the yard smelled like hickory smoke, I looked around at the people sitting in lawn chairs, the people who'd quietly shown up when it mattered. I raised my glass of iced tea and said only one sentence. From now on, generosity follows gratitude. It wasn't rehearsed, but it landed exactly the way I meant it. The conversations resumed, laughter rising in soft waves, the porch light spilling gold on the hydrangeas. The world felt ordinary again, which was exactly the miracle I needed. After everyone left, I sat on the porch steps and thought about what I'd built. Not revenge, not punishment, but order. My son could call it whatever he wanted. I called it recovery. 4 days later, on October 14th, I met with my estate attorney, Mark Kavanagh, in his office downtown. The room smelled like leather and copy toner. He adjusted his glasses as I explained what I wanted. "I'd like to add a letter of wishes to my trust," I said. He nodded, pen poised. "Any future family travel funds require dual approval, mine and the trustees, and written itineraries listing the payor on every reservation." Mark smiled. "That's very specific." "I learned the cost of vague," I said. When he printed the amendment, he paused before stapling it. "Mr. Hale, you're not being cynical. You're being careful. I've waited 67 years to learn the difference," I told him. He chuckled softly. "I hope your son understands someday." "If he does," I said, "it won't be because I lectured him. It'll be because he read the paperwork." That evening I stopped at the diner where my wife and I used to go on Fridays. Same red booth, same waitress, older by a decade. She looked at me and said, "Haven't seen you in a while." "Been finishing something," I said. "Finally did." When I got home, I archived the case binder and pulled out one page, the final judgment, stamped and signed. I slipped it into the kitchen drawer beside the warranty manuals and old appliance receipts, not as a trophy, but as a compass. Because that's what justice really is, a direction you can check when your heart forgets which way respect points. Before bed, I sat at my desk and looked through the emails Priya had sent, the thank you letter from Pacific Crown Travel, and the 529 account confirmation for my granddaughter. I realized that every bit of it, the receipts, letters, and timestamps, had stopped being proof of pain. They'd become proof of progress. Outside, a neighbor's wind chime sang softly in the cool night air. I thought about the morning at O'Hare, the sterile light, the sound of the jet bridge closing, and how that moment used to echo in my head like a slammed door. Now it felt smaller, almost peaceful, like a lesson I'd already learned. When I turned off the lamp, I caught my reflection in the window, a man who had been told to go home and did exactly that, but on his own terms. And as I stood there, in the quiet kitchen, I whispered what had become my private prayer, my new rule, and my truest kind of revenge. Never let love bankrupt you. Late October. The mornings turned thin and silver. I could see my breath when I stepped outside. The hydrangeas had gone pale, the kind of color that only shows up when something has earned its rest. That's how I felt too. Rested, not retired. On October 27th, I drove east before sunrise. Lake Michigan sat quiet, a sheet of pewter under a sky, still deciding on daylight. I parked near the pier, poured coffee from a thermos, and opened a small envelope marked Personal Travel Confirmation. Inside was a single voucher, January 12th, 2026, Kauai North Shore Resort. Lead guest, Martin Hale. My name again, exactly. Where it belonged. I booked it myself this time. Online, double-checked every field, printed 2 copies, and even mailed one to Lena just for fun. She'd laughed when I told her. Solo trip, she asked. Solo at first, I said. Then maybe the last 3 days you and the little one can join, if you want to. She smiled. We'll see, Dad. Let's earn it this time. The stem idea of earning it, that felt right. I sipped my coffee and watched a gull trace the horizon line. I thought about Daniel, whether he'd ever see what he'd actually lost. Not the money, not the inheritance, but access to decency. There are prisons smaller than pride, and he'd built his own. I had no key to offer him anymore. Still, I didn't hate him. Hate is too expensive. I'd already paid enough. The lake wind picked up, lifting the edges of the voucher. I pressed it flat with my hand and smiled. You told me to go home, I whispered to the water. So I did. I just built a better one. I thought about my granddaughter's question, was Hawaii nice, and realized something strange. In a way, I'd already been there. The blue of her eyes when she laughed, the sound of Lena's voice, saying Dad without hesitation, those were oceans too. The funny thing about justice is that it rarely looks cinematic. It looks like a deposit slip, a quiet meal, a lock that works. It looks like knowing your own worth without needing anyone else to sign off on it. Before I left the pier, I took out a small note card and wrote a line for myself, something to tape. On the fridge when I got back, you didn't lose me, you gave me away. It wasn't a wound anymore. It was a motto. As I folded the note, the first sunlight spilled over the water, a clean gold edge that made everything shimmer. I stood there for a long minute, letting the wind sting my face in the best possible way. For the first time since that July morning at O'Hare, I felt weightless, not because everything was fixed, but because I'd finally stopped carrying someone else's failure as my own. I headed back to the car, the thermos empty now, the day just beginning. The reflection of the lake flashed across the hood, silver turning to blue. I started the engine and whispered the last word, written at the bottom of the judge's order, the word that had followed me from courtroom to closure, from humiliation to horizon. Satisfied. And this time, I meant it. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're listening at night, set your thermostat the way you like it. No one else gets a vote.